President Joe Biden begins the blame game to shift the responsibility onto others over the economic and energy crisis. We talk about the difference between Putin phobia and Russophobia, and this is Disrupt. Well, hello everybody, welcome to another 6 p.m. episode of Disrupt. Thank you so much for all the great feedback and support that you've guys shown us over the last 2-3 days. This show is growing every day massively. It's the Ukraine Brief, where we disrupt the mainstream media narrative and give you the news that either they're not giving you or they're giving them a bit of a spin and propaganda, so we're trying to fix their spins. So today, of course, we've been covering a lot when it comes to the Ukraine conflict, whether on the ground what's going on, and of course we've also talked about a lot of issues, including the labs in Ukraine and NATO, and of course Kremlin's chaos. So let's talk about energy security. A lot of you guys have been emailing us to discuss what's going on with the energy crisis because it's related to the Ukraine conflict. Now, firstly, let's talk about the US, then I'm going to talk about the UK as well, and China. America, the White House, and Joe Biden, they don't understand the word sorry. They don't understand the word blame if it's related to them. They always want to shift the blame onto others. This energy crisis in America, and of course globally too, but especially in America, started before Ukraine. Started when President Biden became president. And this has been going on, the same applies to the inflation crisis that they have. Every country in the Western civilization, the democracies, had to deal with the lockdown days and all the restrictions and all the regulations and spending and borrowing. Everybody did, right? But not everybody fell into the same trap when it comes to the crisis of economic crisis of inflation and everything else. So the UK and America, UK is still in a better position in terms of economically, but there is still a lot of issues, cost of living crisis. We're going to talk about that. But America is now blaming everything on Ukraine and saying that, well, the gas prices and oil prices are going up because of Ukraine, because of Putin. Not really. That's not how it started, is it? Because you were blaming the inflation on lockdown. Watch this.
The president's statement blames the Putin price hike. Are you guys just going to start blaming Putin for everything until the midterms?
Well, we've seen the price of gas go up at least 75 cents since President Putin lined up troops on the border of Ukraine.
And last month, the statement didn't mention the Putin price hike. It mentioned inflation because of the pandemic. Why is that?
Exactly. You can't keep coming up with excuses every single time something happens. Say, well, it's that person's fault or that country's fault or this crisis' fault. Take some responsibility because you could have prevented it. You knew if your intelligence community was so good, you could have prevented it. Under Trump, the measures that he took prevented a lot of issues when it comes to the energy sector. He did it. And you call it protectionism, and I'm a libertarian, but I don't call it protectionism. It's just common sense governance. Now you're coming out, all this chaos is happening. Biden is now freezing, decided obviously to freeze the new oil and gas drilling leases after court rules against the climate. So basically, because of all this green crap, he decided to stop the production of a lot of his plants. And so he's blaming Putin and Ukraine. You're the one who brought down production. You're the one who increased spending. And you wonder why you're in this mess. Well, just look at this. This is just obviously one graph in terms of the regular gas prices ever since Biden became president, before Ukraine and before the last phase of lockdown days, the third lockdown days. And he's now saying, well, you shut down production, you increased the prices, and you completely, the inflation, for example, in terms of spending, got out of control for everyday people. And you're blaming it on something that just started a couple of weeks ago. People don't believe that anymore. People are not stupid. Now you're looking at the opinion polls for Donald Trump and the GOP in general, DeSantis, for example. They're coming up because people who, for some reason, decided to vote for you, at least those who are still alive and voted for Biden, the actual voters, that's a joke, YouTube, that's a joke, then they're changing their minds because they know that was a massive, massive mistake. Now, when you look at China, this is a game that they started ages ago. And they've been ready for this because they knew that as the West go towards this net zero extreme nonsense, the militant version of net zero, not in terms of just generic environmental measures. No, people don't have a problem with that. People have a problem with extreme net zero agenda. They didn't realize what was going to happen because the West, until now, a lot of countries like Germany were dependent on Russia when it comes to gas, and like completely Saudi Arabia, Iran, Venezuela, all these countries were our providers when it came to oil and gas. So China realized if this green crap is going to become the next big thing anyway, in terms of globalization of politics, so they're going to have an option. They decided to pretend, in terms of the narrative, to become the leading voice of the green industrial revolution. So they have actually prepared. China have been preparing for all these companies in China who are green, who are going to be selling to the West. Similar situation like the first lockdown, when suddenly every country wanted PPE and all these masks and everything else and gloves. Suddenly China said, oh, guys, it's a coincidence, but we are ready. We have all these PPE ready for you. We're in our factories. And we're like, oh, that's a coincidence that you have everything ready. So they were already prepared to win and to take advantage financially of any crisis. They're going to win this crisis again. It's a crisis between East and West in terms of Russia and the West and NATO. China are going to be winners, as usual. Look at this one. This is 2018, when China were leading on the world's clean energy investment, according to one of the reports that came out on China's policy area. So they were already preparing because they know if the net zero is the next big thing, the West has a choice between either remaining dependent on, for example, Russian oil and gas and Iran and Saudi, or go green. And if they go green, China could provide cheaper green. And that's why they were smart. And this is a problem for the West. But we still have an opportunity. So let's not panic just yet, because China didn't see what was going to come now. So with this conflict in Ukraine, it's creating a new opportunity. So for example, in the UK, we've had all these price caps, which is absolutely nonsensical. It's like the argument for people who say private companies fail because of incompetence. And so the best thing to do, and no competition, to nationalize them. Right, so if you nationalize them, how is that going to fix anything? Because nationalizing it, the people running is still incompetent anyway, especially if it's bureaucrats. And there's no scrutiny, there's no accountability. Nationalized companies don't answer to anybody. Because it's not the public that owns it, that controls it. It's our money, but the government owns it in terms of the actual everyday management. So this is absolutely chaotic. I'm not really sure why people think this is a good idea. The price caps, the heating oil prices are going up. This is despite the price cap. This is affecting 1.5 million households. No one's talking about this issue. And we are wondering why we are now forcing our politicians and governments to change their mind. So this was doom and gloom. Now I'm going to give you the good news. Yes, this is creating, this situation in Ukraine is actually creating a new opportunity for us, the right side of the argument. The Net Zero Watch been publishing this report, and this new shale revolution could be our way out of this, and this is going to freak out China, and they probably didn't expect this to happen. So they thought that we're either going to be like Germany, begging Russia, for example, for oil and gas, or because of Net Zero and COP26 gang, we're going to have to go to Beijing and beg for clean energy, green crap. So we now have an opportunity to drill. So if we extract shale gas, if we do fracking, and which we are now forcing by default, our governments are going with that now. And Boris Johnson has now indicated that he's now going to be reviewing all the fracking sites. That, in addition to the one other solution that we've been talking about and we've been shut down for years and years. Nuclear plants. Small, cheap, and safe. Not these big ones that you have to go to China for massive infrastructural investment. No. That will take decades and decades to build, and you don't even know what's going to happen with it. Small, local, and affordable, and it will be easier to manage, and it will be safer to manage. This is the future. It will, of course, take time, just like fracking. But this could counter the argument that's coming from China. And China, who've been preparing for all this like green crap stuff, have got everything ready. All these companies are ready. If we now say, unfortunately, President Xi, your best friend Putin ruined your plan. Because now, because of the political argument and pressure, we don't have to go to you anymore. Because our people are in need. Our people, the cost of living crisis is hitting them. The priority is no longer right now green energy in that sense. No, not green in terms of the traditional renewable nonsense. Then there's a new green energy. It's called nuclear and fracking. Go with nuclear and fracking and sell it as green energy, and you will beat China. And that's the main argument that we have to use. And it will be cheaper, and it won't affect our everyday lives and lifestyles, and getting rid of everything that we have. Doesn't really change anything in that sense, but it will actually save us from the crazies. Now, this is creating a lot of also new debates as well. For example, there is a difference between Putin phobia and Russophobia. And we, as the actual citizens of the West, have to be careful. Whilst our governments and politicians are going extreme with measures and sanctions, that's fine. That's their battle. We have to be careful not to do these things. When there is a random shop, a corner shop in London, and the people just happen to be Russian, there's no links to oligarchs or the treasury in Moscow, why would we target them? If there is some sort of oligarch or some sort of gangster from Russia that they make money here and they send it to Putin, that's hypothetically, let's just say, I get that. I get the sanctions against them. Fine. But if you're going to target every single random Russian person who is in the West, you do realize the majority of these people ran away from Moscow. They ran away from Putin to have a better life here. Now you're saying that, well, we are seeing you just the way we see the rest of the Kremlin gang. It's very, very bad. I earlier sat down with our political editor, Peter Barnes. This is also a new segment on their Disrupt. We're going to go to the political editor where we talked about this issue, the difference between Putin phobia and Russophobia, how there is a danger if we're not careful about rebuilding the relationship between Russia and the West. Right now we're here with our political editor, Peter Barnes. Peter, with all this chaos of creating these tensions and cutting off ties, boycotts and sanctions, but I get the economic sanctions on the oligarchs, but if it's a random corner shop in London that's the owners are just Russian and we're attacking the shop and things like that, do you not think what's going to happen? Like, hypothetically, let's just say Putin's going to go tomorrow and we want to basically create a relationship again with Russia. We burn all the bridges, right? Is it going to be a difficult situation for the West and East in the future?
Oh, 100%. I think a lot of people have thought this far ahead. The great sanctions sound great. They're a great way of kind of hitting the Russians really where it hurts, which is often in the wallet. But like you said, we've got to then, once this is all over, and this will finish at some point, we've got to then normalize relations again. We have to bring them back into the international community. They're too much of a global player for them not to be in the community. It's not like North Korea. We can't allow them to sink back off the stage because that often makes states more dangerous, and that's when they become rogue states and all the rest of it. But I do think you are really make a really good point about it being the corner shop. There is my fear is an increase in Russophobia, so the kind of anti-Russian sentiment is going to stay in the UK for quite some time, and I do think it's going to start affecting local businesses and just people on the street and stuff. But we're already seeing it from certain figures on the left and on the right saying that we need to kick people out of the country and everything. And I'm like, I don't really like the narrative on where that's going. But normalization has to come, and it will happen, whether it be with Putin or whether it be with whoever the next guy comes along or woman. I think it's probably going to be a guy realistically. But, we're going to have to bring them back in. So these companies that are pulled out of, say, like Visa and all the rest of it and Apple and all that stuff, they're going to have to go back in. Eventually, they're going to want to tap up their markets to earn money. That's what companies do. But I do think it's going to come with a lot of rules, a lot of regulations around what they expect from the Russian state moving forward. And this has been lingering on my mind for a little while once the sanctions stuff really started to hit, because the G7 have just confirmed that they want to remove active trade status, like a preferential trade from Russia as well. So, that will have a huge economic impact.
I mean, it is a fair point, and it is a danger, and we have to make sure that we don't really burn all bridges forever between people, actual people, not governments, not politicians, not forces. There is a massive difference, and we have to be very careful. Now, as I said, we're going to also add a new segment, apart from the segment we just saw. The News in Your World is coming back, where you guys send us, used to do that about a year ago before, actually ages ago, where we get happy news from you guys, good news in your world, whether in your personal life, some sort of achievement, or a regional area where you are, or anything that we missed, maybe give us some sort of happy news, some sort of positivity. Send it to Lacey at my2c This segment is yours, basically. We are going wishy-washy liberal here. We are the new hipsters on the right, but we're going to give finishes with some happy news. This is the happy segment. So we are now hearing that governments, at least in Western Europe and in the completely West as well, America and Canada, are now considering to slowly phase out the international travel immunity passports or health passports over the next coming months. So because they realize, well, the majority of our population have already got the jabs anyway. The whole point of this was as a bluff to force people, enforcement and coercion. And they realize, well, it's done now. And it's creating a lot of bureaucracy for us anyway, for governments, that's what they're thinking. So what we're hearing is there are indications that the European governments and American governments are going to be phasing out the international health passport as well. But I will believe it when I see it. So we'll have to wait to make sure they will confirm this. Thanks you so much for all the support, especially yesterday's show completely went massive as well on YouTube. So thank you so much again. Subscribe to the channel. Click on the bell next to it. Don't forget to send us your stories on MyTC, and we are the media, and this was Disrupt.